Hello, and welcome to episode number 1 of Meant to Move. My name is Vanessa. I am going to be your host every week for this brand new podcast. I'm really excited to bring this to you. And today, for something a little bit different, I have my dear and wonderful father with me. Hello, Father.
Hello, Vanessa.
He has very graciously agreed to help me out with admin, behind the scenes. I've so lovingly dubbed him Papa Producer. I don't know if he knew what he was getting into when we first started, but he's stuck now. So today is going to be really interesting because he is actually going to be interviewing me for the purpose of you knowing what we are all about at Meant to Move. So this is the purpose of today. I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to be interviewed by my dad, and I thought that I would let him introduce himself and then we'll get started. We're going to dive straight in. So, Papa Producer, tell us, what is your life situation at the moment? Who are you, and are you excited?
Well, I don't know whether excitement's the right word. First of all, my name is Nick, and Vanessa is my eldest daughter, and she has a bit of a habit of roping me into some of her projects. I've been retired for a few years now, so she probably thinks I've got a lot of time to do things. But like most retired people, you actually do find quite a lot to do. So how I'm going to go in helping her being Papa Producer, as she's dubbed me, I'm not too sure. I have no experience in this sort of caper. So we'll give it a go. And I'm still actually I have interviewed people in the past, but more for a different type of purpose.
In your previous life?
In my previous life, which we don't really need to go into too much. I was a former customs officer, and I've been retired from there for a number of years. But now here I am helping my daughter. We share similar interests. Liz in Sydney, I live in Melbourne, so we don't see each other that often. I was only there actually a few days ago, so we had a chance to catch up and share notes on books and things like that. Actually, I bought her quite a lot of her old books that she had on a bookshelf that were crowding my garage. So
and now they're crowding my bookshelf.
They are crowding her bookshelf now. Yeah. But anyways, it's now more appropriate to dive into it, as Vanessa says. Okay, really basic question, I suppose. Where did your love of exercise and movement originate? Where did it come from?
It's such a good question, and it's hard to kind of know because yourself and Mum essentially had me in sport, in movement from quite literally a baby. I think Mum put me into swimming classes as a baby. My first memories of movement and exercise would be dance. I remember my ballet tutu and my ballet shoes, and having to do my ballet concerts and my dance concerts, very closely then followed by swimming, and we did gymnastics. I did school aerobics. I did netball, basketball very briefly, tennis very briefly. I did everything, and I don't recall ever not really moving or exercising. And I even remember, I think it would have been about 16. This is when I finished gymnastics and I was in high school and into school aerobics then, and dragging Mum into the gym with me, like the local bodybuilder gym with all the big massive dudes everywhere. And then they had pictures of bodybuilders on the roof and stuff like that. It was always there, you know what I mean? And that love has just turned into being able to help other people love that as well. Right now, my loves of movement are Pilates, calisthenics. I think swimming is a little bit more recreational now, but I love hiking. I love paddleboarding, get me on a kayak. So I don't know, you can't take me away from movement. Basically, it is something that fills me with a lot of joy and a lot of purpose.
And I think you actually mentioned that you dragged Mum into the gym at that time, and I think that's something you enjoyed doing. I'd never set foot in a gym, I think, until maybe you had gotten into your career or your uni course at that time. So that's when you started getting me interested. So I think I observed that from that early age, you had a passion for being involved in that industry, but also to teach people. And coming from the background I think you were very open to learning. As you mentioned, you did a lot of sports, and you love being tutored, mentored. That's something that you're moving into yourself. It's now progressed to where you call yourself a movement therapist. So maybe you can explain what a movement therapist is.
I think this is the $1,000,000 question, and it's the question that I aim to be answering over this next kind of 4 or 5 weeks with a couple of different professionals who you'll hear over the next few weeks. And it's because it's not quite a loaded question, but it is a really challenging question to answer in a simple way, because movement therapy is exactly what it sounds like. It's therapy in a form of movement, but what that is completely individualized for the person. And it's also completely individualized for the day, for the stress level, for the, for the week, for their period in their life, for, all of the minute small things that can change from day to day, week to week, year to year. Movement therapy changes and adapts for you and with you. So that's a really big part of it. Movement therapy is about learning as well as about coaching. So part of what we do is ask a shit ton of questions, basically. I ask so many questions of my clients. I don't ever really stop asking questions. And that question feedback, that question answer format gives me the basis and a level of understanding of someone's mood, their emotion, their psychological state, their body state, how joints moving together and separately. And the journey of movement therapy is really different for each person, but it's really cool because it can be so different. The challenge is, the way that I like to see movement therapy is like a bit of a problem solver. You have to be a bit of an expert generalist. So the clients who I end up seeing, I don't want to say that they have problems, because we all have problems, we all have issues, but they can be complex and they're challenging to digest. And these complex challenges aren't necessarily suited to any professional in the industry. Like you said, the learning aspect for me, I've been doing what I've been doing now for 18 years. It's quite a long time. And like you said, I started doing it when I was 19, and there was no way I was a movement therapist at 19. I was, coaching young girls for aerobics, and I was just coaching kind of friends of the family and just getting people moving and understanding. But through each course that I've done, through multiple mentors, through so many different experiences, you take all of those components and now you have this library of experiences and knowledge to draw from so that you can apply that to the person in front of you. And I've always been a bit of a perfectionist, but the perfectionist in me, the useful part of that is the problem solving, because when someone comes to me with a challenge, with an issue that no one can seem to find an answer or a solution for, I just try to look outside the box. I find ways of creating movement that, a lot of people have called weird or whatever, but it allows people to move in a way that's safe for them with whatever issue they have going on, so that then they can make exercise and movement a part of their life long term. And sometimes it's an easy journey with some people, but other times it's not an easy journey and it can be really challenging. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like movement therapy is like you're working with an onion, and you kind of like peel away the first layer of somebody, and then all of a sudden you've got a whole new, all new things to kind of look at and deal with. And then you peel back another layer and you peel back another layer. And I find it infinitely fascinating how one person can be made up of so many different experiences and then just defy logic or defy common convention. But, somehow they're there doing the things that they're doing. I find that so incredible. And that's what I love about movement therapy, is that there's not a single way to solve things. It's not, if you follow steps A, B, and C, then you'll have a healthy life forever. It's not like that. It is completely about the individual. And that's why I think it's so important for individuals to learn about it, because if you can be focused on you, and if you have a professional who can focus on you even just for a little bit, 1 or 2 sessions, it can be completely transformative for so many different reasons.
Yes, that's very well said, Vanessa. I think it's a measure of how you've gone about it too. I think there's been an evolution, I guess, from where you began as a PT, and even from my own observations, I've seen how you have evolved from early beginnings. I mean, you always were able to establish good rapport with people because you've got a nice, bubbly, outgoing personality and likable. I like you.
Oh, well, thanks.
I like you a lot, but very biased, of course. But I could see from when you first began that, you're much like other trainers, I guess, when you first began, you wanted to put people through their paces. And I remember going to some of your sessions that you took with groups in various places and some videos that you posted, and you were like the others. You were barking out instructions, go and do, 10 push-ups and do all this or whatever. But I think you moved on pretty quickly from that, because I think you realise that people are different. People have different needs, and they're at different levels. And I know it's the odd times that you have trained me or given me instructions, that I have limitations in movement on one side or whatever. So you're very aware of that. And also you're quite aware of biomechanics in general and parts of the body where, you can touch somebody and you can hurt them there, but it affects them in another area of their body.
Hurt them in a good way. You're making me sound bad.
No, but you're relieving the pressure. I'm talking about your trigger point.
Yes,
therapy, and that sort of thing. But
it's true though.
Yeah, but then I've seen you wanting to learn more and more about the fitness industry and teach yourself or learn more aspects about the body, about health in general. And you've consulted with people, you've gone on courses, you've learnt other skills, and I think you surrounded yourself with a good group of people over the years. And through those experiences, you've matured and you've become more of a teacher yourself. And I know that you enjoy doing that when you host events or when you participate in fitness conferences. And I don't know, you've been to Asia and done them here in Melbourne and in Sydney, and I've seen you perform. You're quite good at it. I think it's that passion. You've invested in your own education quite a lot, and it shows in the way that you try and expand that out to people, develop that rapport with them, and treat them as individuals, not as a group of people. Although obviously you do train groups of people.
I think one of my pet hates about the fitness industry, from a perspective, it might be an internal perspective, and you can help me if this is a consumer perspective of it as well, is that it feels very segmented. It feels like, here's Pilates over here, and here's yoga over here, and here's boxing over here, and then here's CrossFit, and here's functional training, and here's blah, 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 whatever it might be. And everyone's in their own little box. And the boxes don't like to talk to each other. And the box over here wouldn't learn from the bodybuilders, and the bodybuilders wouldn't learn from the calisthenics people. And I'm yet to encounter an exercise that is bad. However, it might not be the right exercise for the person in front of you, because no exercise is bad. And this is where I want to keep an open mind. And I like keeping an open mind and hearing about people's different experiences in multiple different streams of fitness. This is why I've taught Group X and I've done personal training for years and years and years and years, because to me, they make sense to do together. We're social beings, but I have specific needs and I need to work on them by myself and solo as well. Not a big fan of traditional fitness, traditional moving. I used to train at a bodybuilding gym. I remember training on these machines and they didn't fit my body. Like, I could never reach anything. I'm freaking 5'2". I can't reach anything. So when I'd be sitting in the leg machines, I couldn't get my full range of motion. They didn't go deep enough for me to be able to feel like I was getting something out of it. So that for me, very early on, I was 16, 17, 18, and I'm going like, this doesn't feel right for me. And I have learned to listen to those cues in my body. But that doesn't mean that I can't learn something from a bodybuilder. Like the gym that I work at right now is bodybuilders, it's calisthenics coaches, it's Pilates coaches, it's kickboxers. There's a state skater, like ice skater, and everyone's got their own little quirks and super interesting things. And the cool thing about that is that everyone learns from everybody. There's no segmentation of, oh, this is better than that, or this is the only way to do things, because it's not the only way to do things. Where movement therapy is so important to me, where I get really passionate about it, is helping people find what they love about movement. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter if it comes from any of those places. As long as you find something that feels good for you and works for you, then you're on the magic. Like that's all that's important.
It is. It's all important. How do you actually connect with people on an individual basis when you're training them individually? Or and a second part of that question, I suppose, is the group part of it. There'd be different aspects, I guess, to the two, wouldn't there?
Yeah. So one-on-one is, I don't tell anybody what to do. I'm asking. That's probably the biggest feature of what I do, is I ask, and I ask for feedback. And people think that they go to a coach or a trainer to be told what to do. But essentially what I like to do is I like to learn about somebody and help them connect with their body, so they can tell me what feels good, and they can tell me what feels right, and how they pulled up and what they enjoy. And then I help guide them to things that they enjoy and things that make them feel better and things that don't put them in pain. So questions one-on-one, how I connect. A lot of people who come to see me are in pain. They've had chronic pain. They've had chronic illness, maybe a chronic injury. And because of the questions that I'll ask them, they'll cry. They're upset. It's a safe space for them to feel emotions, all of the emotions that are associated with whatever the hell is going on in their body. Because we don't often talk about or go into any of the emotional side of what it is to train, of what it is to be in pain, what it is to have a chronic illness, or any of those things. And there's a huge emotional and psychological component to that. So that is a huge factor when it comes to working with people.
Now, how do you manage that when someone has those emotions or that chronic pain? How do you, because they're coming to you to train, but maybe that's preventing them from training. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's hard, because the way that I can explain it best is that I hold space for them to let whatever emotion that they're feeling to be felt. I'm not going to get angry or frustrated or upset at someone for having an emotion or being upset or not wanting to do something. A client of mine had a very visceral fear reaction just yesterday. She had a very intense accident, broke her ankle in quite a few places, and has needed several surgeries. That's super traumatic. It changes your life, something like that. And there's a lot of fear in rehab when you're working with someone who's relearning how to trust their body. And fear, this is an extreme example. Fear is scary, right? And so I have to hold space for her to wait until she's ready, but at the same time let her know that I'm there to support her when we need to do the hard things. So I'm her support. Yes, I'll hold your hand while you do the hard thing the first time, and then I'm going to let you go and do it yourself. But I'm not going to push you if you don't think you're ready. Because at the end of the day, I want to teach you to do things for yourself, not to listen to me for guidance, like not to listen to me for when to do it. That's part of the process, and emotions are part of that process. And I think that when people come to see me who don't know exactly what I do, but then they open themselves up to allowing those emotions to come in, they're kind of shocked as to how much better they feel so much quicker, because there is that safe space for them to be allowed to train. And safety is the number one subconscious barrier, in my opinion, for pain-free movement, because we've had so many experiences in our life. If you just think about injuries and pain that you've had, everyone has them. And subconsciously, that all gets stored in your head. And You might not know that you're scared, or you might not know that you're afraid, or you might not know that you've triggered an emotional response inside you, but that's what I look for. I've trained myself to be able to see, and funnily enough, it's also a little bit of my ADHD, and I'm very aware of what's going on. That allows me to ask you the question, what do you feel? And not just what do you feel in your body, like how are you feeling? That looks uncomfortable. Oh yeah, it's uncomfortable. Okay, tell me why. What's uncomfortable about it? I try to listen to the words that they're saying, because sometimes people don't even know how to describe it. Like, how do you describe something that you're unsure of? It's hard. So I have to try to hold space for someone to let them figure it out, but also to, like, I'll hold your hand. I'm here. I'm here regardless of what you feel. I'm in your corner. I'm your safe person. And for some people, like particularly through COVID, like I was one of the few people who would see my clients like week in, week out. And sometimes that's hard for me. Like during COVID was really hard. There was less personal separation. So I felt really sometimes a little bit overwhelmed by the emotions that my clients were having. But at the end of the day, I'm not responsible for anyone's emotions, and they're not responsible for my emotions, but they can have them without a fear of being judged or me changing my opinion about them or any of those things, which we all think is what's going to happen when we start expressing emotion around people, particularly in the exercise space. I think that that's where the magic happens. It's because they can truly just be.
So you're actually saying that the emotional aspect is probably as important, or probably even more important than the physical aspect, but it's some people are probably more open to expressing themselves. But I imagine in a group situation, that must be even more difficult for people to express themselves that way and for you to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I've taught so many different types of group exercise over the years, from things like hula hoop classes, skipping classes, gym stick, weights, body weight, crazy mental running around classes called zoo. Like, I have taught everything under the sun. Essentially, group X is a little bit more of a performance. What's happening in that space is that I have more influence over how to create an environment and how to create a feeling through the movement, through the music, through what I say. So if you're coming in and you're doing a weights class, the language that I use, the music that I play, the way that I stand and the way that I hold my body is different than if I was teaching a mat Pilates class, because it's a completely different aspect to what I want you to feel. I want you to feel completely different after the end of the class. So I'm trying to influence the feel and what the class results are more in group exercise. And now we still have that environment where if the music's good and everyone's feeling good, you get that kind of collective vibe, and that's where the magic happens in group exercise. That's where it's really fun and it's social and people come and they make friends. And I've had some truly, truly transformational classes over the years where it's just a community of people and everyone knew each other's name and it's just fun, and there's nothing really that surpasses that. It gives you tingles, like it's like going to a music concert. Those are hard to replicate. So if you're in a community that has that, that's incredible. That's a great time. But it's still really hard to get, obviously, what you said, that one-on-one connection. Group exercise, for me, I want to walk out of group X and I want to feel better in some way, either mentally better, socially better, I've had a bit of a chat or whatever, or I've listened to some good music and I feel like uplifted, a bit of oxytocin, and I've moved my body. So group exercise for me is a way to disconnect from me, get told what to do, and immerse myself in that space. And that's why I love teaching it as well, because, I get more influence over that, which is fun. I get to pretend to be a DJ for 45 minutes.
So what are some of the challenges that you've faced throughout your life and career to this date?
I think initially, I brought up perfectionism. So that for me is a really big one, which affected me probably earlier on. So as a teenager and in my early 20s, that's where it really affected me. I wanted to get high grades. I wanted to be the best in what I was doing, regardless of what it was. I think in year 12, I pushed myself pretty hard. I had quite high anxiety and I wasn't happy. I was depressed because I didn't think that I was good enough for it. But, I still walked away as the only person in year 12 to have an academic award and a sporting award, which is, that's just kind of where I wanted to be. And that followed through to uni. Out of the 300 people who were there, I remember the first day of uni, one of the lecturers said, every single one of you is going to want this mentorship cadetship in year 3. There's 300 of you. Only one of you is going to get it. And like that day, I was like, yeah, that's mine. I'm going to get it. And I got it. So I'm very stubborn. Perfectionism is useful to a degree because it pushes me and drives me towards being better. But it did hold me back because, I got a scholarship to do my honours the year after that, and it was a disaster. An undiagnosed ADHD at the time. You and I had no idea what that was, but I went into this scholarship to do a research thesis, chained to a desk, thinking about abstract things like caffeine and bicarbonate soda and things like that, and I was miserable, but I felt like I'd failed. But it wasn't something that I wanted to do, and it wasn't until I completely changed my environment, completely changed my life, that I was like, oh, okay, no, you're not a failure. That's not for you. Like that's not the way that you need to live your life. You need to find a different way to live your life. And so early on, anxiety and depression, I would say, were big parts of that. But then later on in my life, so I've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So I have Hashimoto's. I got diagnosed, I think, in 2019, and I had no idea that I had it. I just went and got a routine blood test, and then up came all of these antibodies, and there was autoimmune. And there's a whole bunch of, reproductive issues. I had to get cervical cancer cells removed twice. I've had endometriosis surgery just recently, like still recovering, week 3 recovery from endo surgery. And I am extremely hypermobile. And then I also got late diagnosed ADHD, which, totally changed my life in terms of understanding how my brain works a little bit more and why I am the way that I am. But all of these challenges has allowed me to find different ways of looking at things. Like the Hashimoto's, for me, say it's a lifelong thing, but I don't really get affected by it. I've had an incident where it did affect me, but I was able to adapt and overcome that pretty easily, knowing what I know. But on a day-to-day, because I try to practice what I preach, I feel like I've been able to have these experiences. They've come toward me, and they've been frustrating and challenging. But I think that I would be way worse off if I wasn't doing what I was doing. I don't actually know how my body would cope with all of these things that are outside my control in terms of endo and Hashimoto's and the hypermobility spectrum. I honestly think that I wouldn't be able to move, that I would be in so much pain from those challenges. And I think that movement therapy or moving your body and being healthy and holistic allows me to function without really noticing that I have these lifelong disorders, illnesses, whatever it might be, on a day-to-day basis. So
probably those sort of emotional and physical challenges that you face probably helped you have empathy with some of your clients perhaps, and allows you to connect better with them because of that, which is a plus, I suppose, in your position.
Yeah, definitely. And empathy is hard. As a 19-year-old PT, it's not that you don't want to have empathy. It's just that you don't know. Like you don't know enough about the world. So rapport is great. It's useful. But having someone, I think, who can relate to you is super helpful in any walk of life. It doesn't have to be as your PT or anything like that. It's very liberating to have someone acknowledge how you feel in any sense through your challenges.
You've met a lot of people in your time and obviously listened to a lot of people in your education. And who are the people that have influenced you most throughout your life and career?
This is hard It's a hard question. I think, I think your mum influenced me by allowing me to have multiple hobbies of sport, and you're very encouraging in that sense. You never held me back. You must have been running around like a crazy person, taking me to like so many different sports, which would have been so painful. Yeah, you're nodding your head for people who can't see this. So I think that's probably the first influence. The really cool thing that I'm excited about with this podcast is that the people who have influenced me the most, you'll actually get to hear them. So I would say early on in my career, the person who influenced me quite a lot was someone called Ian O'Dwyer, and he's actually going to be coming on to this podcast relatively regularly. He has a segment, and I'll introduce these segments as we go. But he introduced me to fascia, which is a component of the body that not very many people talk about. And if you don't know anything about it, don't worry, I will go into it, just not today. And that made me look at the body completely differently, because what you're taught in very scientific exercise terms, performance, where I was in, it's very clinical, it's very rigid, and you learn that A plus B equals C, and that's the way that it goes. And after learning from Ian, it was like A plus Z equals F, like on one person, and then on the next person, who the hell knows what that could be. And I actually found that liberating, not scary, because then it meant that it didn't all have to fit so neatly. And I don't think anything really fits that neatly in a box. So he's been such a great influence, and I'm so excited that we get to collaborate over these next few months and really dive into what that influence was and how we can influence people now with the knowledge that we've had and the experiences that we've had. That'll be really cool. The thing I think that still influences me is the fact that I read everything. I don't know if this is real or not, but they say that people who read fiction and fantasy are more empathetic for whatever reason. And I've got a bookshelf full of fiction and fantasy sitting in there. Books are super influential, whether they are real life or whether they are a fiction or fantasy. I remember when I used to work at Virgin Active, I would sit there in my break with my anatomy book, because normal people read anatomy books on their breaks.
That's very nerdy.
Yeah, that's your fault. So that love of reading, that desire to just be transported to a different place or a different journey has helped me see people's journeys, has helped me understand that there's different ways to accomplish the same thing. And I carry that on. Everyone's got a hero story. Like, what's your hero story? Like,
you've mentioned one guest. I imagine we can probably expect other guests of similar caliber in different fields. But why have you started this Meant to Move podcast, and what do you hope to achieve from it?
Yeah, big part of it was that people would ask me what I do. And like I said, I don't really have a simple answer for you. So I was on a podcast. You can check it out. It's called Purpose-Driven Movement. And since I've been on that podcast, I've loved the nuance of podcasting, where you can have a conversation about a topic and you can actually go into the nitty-gritty and talk in detail about it. Whereas I find on social media and other platforms, it's just so surface, and I can't express what I want to educate people on or what I want to say in such a short format. It doesn't work. So this is why I want this podcast out in this space, is because I know that there are a lot of professionals where there are people first professional, and what they do is nuanced and it's challenging to describe. And I think that this podcast is going to be an amazing resource for people who want to learn about themselves, because it is about learning about yourself, but you learn about it from the experiences of others and through the education that we can bring you in a simple way. Like, I don't want to make anything complicated. It's just going to be the science brought to you where you can understand it and where it makes sense in your body. Because science is great, but we don't know everything. And if something works for you, then who am I to say that there's no science or there's nothing behind it. So movement therapy is about exploring so many different ways of giving yourself therapy, whether it's for your body, whether it's for your mind, whether it's for your emotion, for any of it, in a very nuanced way, so that I'm not just saying, hey, you should go and do this. I'm saying you could try this if you wanted to, based on these reasons, and these might be some of your outcomes. But if that doesn't happen, that's still okay.
So it's fair to say the podcast is pretty much for everyone who's interested in bettering themselves and learning things about fitness and health and general life.
Especially if you're like me and you feel there's like a bit of a resistance to the way things are usually done. You know, I don't like people who don't question the way things are done. Like if you say that to me, I'm instantly going to rebel against you and be like, oh, why? You have to give me more of a reason than that's just the way that it's done, because it'll make sense to me. And I've always been painful like that. He's shaking. Yeah,
I can vouch for that.
But that questioning, I think, has been really helpful in my career, because then it leads me down the rabbit holes. My client will be like, oh, I have this thing. And I'm like, I have no idea what that thing is. And so then here's a new rabbit hole. Okay, sweet. I'm going to go down this rabbit hole. And then I find a multitude of different things that relate to their problem or their issue, but that I already kind of know and that already amalgamate with things that I already do. So
there you go. I think we've learnt quite a fair bit about you today, Vanessa. There's been very open. I probably learned a few things about myself too, but
yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to finish off with?
Please don't be shy. Message me on Instagram, on socials. Reach out if you have questions, if you want to talk about a specific topic, if you have a guest who you think I should interview. I am very interactive. So this is an interactive podcast, and you will see that in the next coming weeks. So thank you for all your questions, Papa Producer.
There you go. Thank you, Vanessa Leone.
Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you soon. If you found this episode helpful, I would love it if you could leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Your feedback helps us reach more people who are looking to transform their health and wellness journey, and I really appreciate you for your support.